the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
We're hearing Senators Corker and Alexander describe the collapse with woe of Obamacare. And other systems are, you might say, collapsing and failing as well. Their costs soaring, their machines not working, their cartelized supporters in the insurance industry as regards Obamacare, those supporters feeding off their contracts with government, profiting from their unique access to government, the government economy. And well, we wonder about other things that are collapsing and what we can do instead to not worry about government, not rely on government, but rather to do our own thing, make our own way, find our own prosperity and our own reasons. Find our own prosperity here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County. In other words, what can we do by our own initiative? A free market solution to a government problem is always going to be the better way. And those people who are caught in the government trap, whose ideas are of such a kind that they cannot escape, they will be there at the very end. Those will be the people who have federally guaranteed retirement plans, corporate retirement plans that are guaranteed by a highly leveraged federal retirement system guarantor. Those are the people who have their cash in an FDIC guaranteed bank. And many others as well. Those who are relying on government to bail them out, to save them, to secure them, they will be the ones who can't see that it's over. They can't see that it's over, and they will be impoverished, perhaps in their bottom lines, but also they're kept in poverty by their ideas. Because if their ideas are of getting their own, getting what's theirs, getting their due, obtaining what is theirs by rights of procedural rights to have a welfare check, to have unemployment payments and the like. Those things are crippling as far as your ideas, and they prevent you from seeing the way out. And so what we're trying to do here at the David Tulis program at AM 1240 and FM 92.7 is to understand the problem of dependency and to encourage you, my listener, to think in terms of your private solution, your private answer. Now, there are many stories that we can talk about, good government stories, government failing stories. They're all kind of the same thing. Even when we have good government, there is the problem of it being a coercive and compulsory good brought about by a statute rather than by grace. Right? We would propose that the marketplace and the gospel would say good things have to come about by grace, by voluntary giving, by self-denial, by self-abnegation, by self-mortification. And then other people prosper, right? And you'll prosper, my listener, if you think first about the prosperity of others. If you make other people successful, you will succeed. If your goal as the owner of the business, let's say you're a businessman who's always there in the shop, if your goal is to help each employee succeed in his field, then you will be successful because you're making him successful. And his success, even as he is your servant, will benefit your company. So your goal should always be to make people successful if they come into contact with your enterprise, your calling. Okay, and those are the ideas that make private solutions and self-government. Now, we are a pro-government station and a pro-government multimedia platform. David Tulis here, your host on the David Tulis Show at Nooga Radio, live on Facebook and live on YouTube. YouTube, it's Hot News Talk Radio. And on Facebook, it's Nooga Radio. I am the leading Nooga centrist, the guru of local economy and free markets here and beyond. Now, the beyond brings us to a wonderful little story about this private initiative that I'm talking about. This, you might say, this investing local, divesting national. That is our argument. If you divest national and your liquidity comes back, it comes out of a highly leveraged, highly endangered stock market, a mutual fund field, and all these contracts, all these bets that people are making in the economy, the financialized economy. Bring that money home and invest locally. Invest first of all, perhaps in yourself. You are going in the right direction. Of course, I don't give financial advice. I don't give investment advice. But generally, I would say, given the failings of the superstructure, the same one about which we have, in which we find Obamacare. Obamacare is a picture of part of that market and a part of that government-controlled economy. If you bring the money home, there's much more prospect of being free, and having cash, paying your debts off, and helping other people with your capital. Being patient as capitalists, you will prosper. And the story is out of Toronto, and it's told at the Foundation of Economic Education. And it's about a man named Eddie Astle, a do-gooder in Toronto. And he took it upon himself to build a staircase on a bit of rough ground in Tom Riley Park in Toronto. And he's a retired mechanic, and he built this staircase after several neighbors fell down the steep path in the park in Otiboki, Ontario. That's in the Toronto area. So neighbors chipped in on the project, and in the end, the bill for the supplies was about $550. Now, that is quite a bit less than a $65,000 or to $150,000 price tag that the city had estimated for its people and its contractors to design the job and put the thing together. The man, Eddie hired homeless people to help him build the 8 steps, and it just took a few hours to do. And people in his gardening group, according to report, are thanking him for his generous effort. Now, the problem is the story is, though, about people concerned about the honor and integrity and the peace and quiet of the municipal government. The city is threatening to tear down the stairs, we read, because they are not built to regulation standards. Now, you ask yourself what regulation standards are. Evidently, they exist somewhere. They may be, maybe in Canada, you can't build a staircase of 8 steps unless it's ADA compliant. In other words, you can't build just steps. You have to build a ramp too. So people in wheelchairs can get down the place where formerly people with legs operating properly fell over. And the mayor, John Tory, says that this private action really is kind of an offense, because what has happened is that a private person bypassed the city laws, the city structures that would have brought that about eventually, maybe after a couple dozen more falls, nothing serious, but falls nonetheless. We would finally have built this staircase. And of course, the fear is also people who are in government are often ones who listen to lawyers, who are in some respects very, very recoiling from risk. And so they say, well, if you let someone build this staircase and someone falls from the staircase, then the city could be sued for having allowed it, right? For having not properly fought the staircase, torn it down, and rebuilt it. There's a liability if we let people take their own initiative in an area which is either property of the park or deeded to the park in somewhere, has some subjection to the city government, because it was a park. Generally, those are owned by the city and maintained by the city. But here, the city had not done that. And Eddie Astle is a picture of what I propose that we do here in Chattanooga, and that is we take our own initiative. We don't wait. Now, think of the things that the government does that are just ludicrous. There's a story that moved in 2013 about a bus stop. The report initially was in the Washington Post. It was $1 million bus stop in northern Virginia, opening March 11. One of 24. It had heated seats, and it had a minimal glass covering with a steel, very heavy steel structure supports underneath it, and minimal cover in rain, but nonetheless cost $1 million to produce. Why do we have to wait on government to do things, which often can be done by people who care about their neighbors and who have private initiative? The theme of local economy as an idea is decentralization, self-government, self-initiative, local investment, Nooga-centrism for us here in Chattanooga. Now, you, my listener, may be caught in that big traffic jam over the ridge cut. And we're glad you're giving us a few minutes of your time. We are a local radio station, local media platform, 1240 AM. Just notch your dial for that. Or if you're out of range of our AM signal, our powerful, powerful AM signal in Soddy Daisy, North County, then you can catch us on 92.7 FM, also 95.3 HD4, and your smartphone. Of course, your smartphone with the TuneIn Radio app, just load that and choose Nooga Radio. There we are, Nooga Radio. You can take these ideas home with you. These are not trademarked to Chattanooga. And Nooga centrism is just my way of being, trying to be provincial and also a little provocative, because that is my term, and that is how I describe my spiritual and even philosophical self-improvement effort to understand what my place is and what my duty is. By that I mean I'm not here by accident. I'm here by God's providence. Okay, I've not risen to the peak of being a local media outlet with a distinct argument. I've gotten here by hard work and God's providence. I've come here by owning a radio station because I tried to help the owner, right? The original partner, the managing partner, a man. I helped him. All I cared about was, what can I do to help you, Mike, Confederate Mike? What can I do to help you? How can I help you? And in that effort to help him, I suddenly became an owner. And it is a propitious and delightful story. And it happens all around the economy, all around local economy. If you mark, we have stories like that happening. The homeless man who helps the store owner keep his lot clean ends up getting a bagging job. Okay, that's how that works. The homeless man who's just concerned about that owner of that lot saying, I see trash on your lot every day when I pass by here, and I'm sure who's doing that, but let me just give me a broom. I'll take care of it for you. I've got a little time on my hands. Let me just take care of it for you. No charge. Okay, a guy like that, he's going to catch the notice of that owner of that shop. And he's just and the homeless man is just concerned about the owner, because he's thinking, well, he can't do good business if I'm not helping him out here with this lot. This lot is full of trash and bits of gnarly stuff on the side, from the sidewalk and the street, and wind blowing things from other parts of the block, and they end up here trapped in this parking area. Well, he can take care of it, and a man like that, because he's caring for his neighbor, ends up getting on the payroll. Right. And then as it turns out, the owner has a daughter who's divorced, say about the same age as this homeless man, and they hit it off. And guess what? The homeless man becomes the son-in-law of the owner of the business, and then becomes a shareholder and an heir of that business as it's passed on through the owner's children. That's how that works. Those are stories that take place more than we realize. I like hearing them. And if you have a story like that to tell, don't hesitate to let me know. 800-8949. That's 800-8949. Today we'll be talking with May Beavers, a candidate for governor. She is I think the only real candidate for governor worth considering, and she's a woman of ideas. This is David Tulis, and you're live on the David Tulis program. What's on your mind?
Hey, Dave, Confederate Mike. I heard your opening, and let me tell you, I don't know what it is or what it's going to take for people to realize that government that governs least governs best. And I wish I would have come up with that quote. And the British now are planning to ban automobile engines that use gasoline. This is what government is about. It's about banning. It's about restricting. The only time government should ever stick its nose into anything is when an individual has created a damage. That's it.
I agree, yes.
And that's what the founders believed. And I don't know what it is that people think they need licenses and privileges and enfranchisements and permission. I think it's because how people were raised, David. You need permission to do it. You need permission. And I think this is the struggle that Trump's having. Is as a business guy, and you're seeing this, we just have to get things done. We want to move forward. Get out of our way. And at every step of the way, you know what you and I are dealing with here, there's another form to fill out. There's another application. And this is what the Soviet Union did to collapse the entire country and the economy. Government needs to get out of the way. I don't know how, in how many ways we need to say that.
Well, I think you're right, Mike. I think the fact that we have government every turn, we are sort of anesthetized, and all of our sharp edges, all of the edges of the genius of our listener are removed, and he can't really make himself distinct. He can't gain traction. He can't really move ahead. He's always pushed back, held back by fears, apprehensions. Maybe I need to get advice from this. Maybe I need to get advice from that. Maybe I need to get a permission. So people go ahead and get permissions for things they don't even need permission for. And there are officials willing to oblige them.
People may not believe this. The federal government, as much as I despise their federal tyranny, are less restrictive than state and local governments. I mean, in dealing with radio stations, very rarely do you hear from the FCC. There's some rules you have to follow. But, they basically leave you alone to do your business. Even, David, in 45 years, I've never had one FCC complaint about speech. But when it's dealing with these local bureaucrats, whether it's the city, the state, especially the state is the worst. When I hear people say state rights, I want to throw up. States don't have rights. They have limited powers under Article 1, Section 10. The federal government has defined powers. But, I cringe in my boots because the state is a very dangerous entity. Remember something. Under Federalist 44 and 45, they claim the states have unlimited powers. The state can tax you at 100%. The federal government has limited powers, only defined by Article 1, Section 8. So when people talk about states' rights, be careful. Be very, very careful with that.
Well, I think when people refer to states' rights, Mike, they're speaking usually in the context of overweening claims and subsidies and control by the United States. And so in that context,
that's nothing to do. The United States doesn't do that. It's the state government going for money, and with that money, they have certain obligations. The feds aren't imposing a will on the states without taking money. The courts have never ruled that's allowed. It's the pigs at the state that say we need licenses now. Let's license people to get married. Let's license this. And federal government, we want your money to militarize the local police. That's not, you can't blame the feds for that. They're taking the money. If you take the money, you have to follow the rules. If they stop taking the money, they don't have to follow any federal edicts that aren't constitutional. Not one.
Well, Mike's making a great point, and that is borne out in a recent analysis a couple days ago at Nooganomics.com, and the headline there is about the legal authority of TVA police to harass people on Highway 153 and elsewhere. And I've made a revision on the lead of that story, essentially conceding the point made by the TVA spokesman Scott Fiedler, and his agency's policing operation is allowed in the statute, and it is remarkably unbounded. It's remarkably unbounded. And here I was at the beginning of the week demanding to know what authority he had. Was it by covenant, convention, agreement, or contract with the Sheriff's Department of the state that TVA cops could now run traffic and run surveillance equipment on traffic, enforcing Title 55, the Transportation Code in Tennessee, and doing other things in the way of public safety. Well, there is still something overbearing about that program, but it comes about because in a larger sense, it comes about because Tennessee, like the other 50 states, has consumed its free Kool-Aid. And in the Tennessee budget, I didn't print out the right graphic here, but the graphics from Pew Trust shows that Tennessee at one point had 45% of its budget from the good people. I think in 2010 it was a low percentage, about 30% or so of the state budget came directly from the good people in Washington. And so that is, of course, by you get the money if you agree to these terms, and that's what we've been doing. And our legislators have all agreed to that. The Republicans, of course, are all part of that. The Republican establishment is exactly in that direction, as is the Democratic establishment. That's why we need to really think in terms of, if we're going to be involved in politics at all, in terms of alternative free market oriented politics and free market oriented representatives who are those who write these laws or write to overturn them. I know that's a long process and not likely to happen, because the people are, you, my listener, and I are sort of undeserving of having a freedom oriented limited state. We don't really deserve it because we don't want it And we don't want it. Why? Because we don't elect representatives who represent that idea. The representatives that we have in Washington and in Nashville represent the idea that we need to get ours, right? And that's one of the poisons, as Frederic Bastiat points out in the law. Once you have a system in place of socialization, of socialism, the first program expands out because people become committed to the idea of getting their share. And eventually everybody in the meat industry, the travel industry, the computer industry, the education industry, every industry, every field has the idea that, well, we need to get our subsidy too, because somebody else over there, who's my competitor, is getting a taste of the free money. And so we all want the taste, and it's very sweet in our mouth. And yet, in our stomachs, it turns to acid. And for that reason, we're not as free as we want to be. But we're still going to push ahead for decentralization and self-government.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
Chattanooga cops and the FBI have just released photos of a man they say robbed a bank at North Point Boulevard Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock a.m. It was a Bank of America. The photos apparently show the man brandishing a handgun. He's a black male. The police are asking the public for help identifying him. 2 shootings in Chattanooga overnight. The first happening at 9 o'clock on Brainerd Road. A victim was shot. The second, gunshots rang out at 34th Street at 6:30 in the evening. Neither victims were killed, and in both cases, the gunman is still on the loose. Just after 9 o'clock at night, a driver lost control of his car and smashed into a tree on Birchwood Pike. Hamilton County Sheriff's deputies said the driver was dead by the time they got there. An investigation is underway to determine the circumstances of the crash. If you're in Soddy Daisy, your property taxes may go up by just under 10 cents. Soddy Daisy officials considering a property tax increase of just under 10 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News, now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
We expect lots of morning sunshine, very hot and humid weather again for your Wednesday. Mainly dry with only a spotty shower possible. Highs 92 to 95 tonight. Lows back into the lower 70s. For Thursday, 90 to 92 with a nice late afternoon shower or storm. More showers and storms likely Friday. Check out Lowe's and get an extra 5% off every day with your Lowe's Advantage card. Subject to credit approval and can't be combined with any other credit offers. Exclusions apply. See store for details. And I'm Sports Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare. On Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
We've got a table here at Delia's, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection. Loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork. We're at Delia's in Soddy Daisy, near the Thrasher Light. Quesadillas, smell them coming. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos made fresh every morning. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch or dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. Mention Sean Hannity and save a dime on every dollar of your tab. Yep, 10% for the Nooga Radio listener.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
Chattanooga's best kept secret, Boyd Speedway. Come see the fastest dirt late model drivers in the South compete for a purse every Saturday night. Pit gates open at 3, grandstand opens at 5. Racing starts at 7. Bring the whole family for a night of fun as they tear it up on the dirt track. Go to BoydSpeedway.net and check out the Dirt Simulator. BoydSpeedway.dirtsimulator.com. Chattanooga's best kept secret, Boyd Speedway. Fun-filled, outrageous racing. We'll see you Saturday night.
The racetrack roars to life every Saturday night. Catch the explosive action only at Boyd Speedway.
Boyd Speedway.
My name is Trevor Ashley. I'm an attorney here with the law firm McCoon, Williams, Ashley, and Stanley. We have a show on Nooga Radio called Legal Bites, where we discuss legal topics of interest to our listeners: estate planning, business formation, and business transactions. Legal Bites, 11 a.m. on Wednesday.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM. Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
This is David Tulis. I'm thanking you greatly for giving me just a couple minutes of your time. We're here at Nooga Radio, the top multimedia platform in Chattanooga that covers local economy and the free markets. I'm very glad to learn today in my perusals of media and news publishing in Chattanooga, Tennessee, part of the world, about a case that was filed in January in Nashville with seeking class action status. It is an attack on the abuse in the statute, the Tennessee law, through the driver's license statute that prohibits people who are poor from getting driver's licenses. Now, the question about driver's licenses is one that we've given a bit of attention to because they are part of commercial government. Commercial government is that which forces people by hook and crook and deception into commerce and creates a presumption of authority over people in what should be, for most users of the road, a free market activity, a private activity, regulation, permission, or taxation, right? Because if you're exercising a right, it cannot be taxed. It cannot be subject to anybody's permission or license, right? If you're free to speak, then you speak freely apart from permission, right? If you're giving a protest, you have a protest apart from anyone's grant to you that you may have a protest, right? Because you are free to do that. You're free to have a meeting to redress grievances against government, and that not be called a conspiracy, right? There are protections in the law that allow actions apart from permission, totally free actions. You can go to the house of worship that you choose. You do not have to be going to one in your area by law, right? There's no law like that at all. Instead, freedom of movement. Now, most people don't believe in that, and it is by a kind of education, a kind of conditioning process. Of course, conditioning is a term out of behaviorism, which assumes that the subject, whether it's a toad, a mouse, or a human being, is an animal, right? These are all of equal value in behaviorism. And behaviorism says you can change behavior, which is what the entity or the subject does, by altering the stimuli. That is, Thorndike and other important American and foreign scientists developed that line of thinking in the late 1800s. And in behaviorism and in education, which today are largely, if it's public schools, is kind of largely the same thing. You alter people's expectations by drumming into them the stimuli that you want to control, the stimuli that you think should control. That is what, in the end, the subject, that would be the student or the person or the citizen, comes to think of as the established norm, right? That is the norm, and what is abnormal, what comes to be abnormal, then is that which is free, right? That which is distinct, that which is not bound by custom or bound by rule. Those are the things that are abnormal. Those are the things that are suppressed. In the end, they're disallowed. There's social sanctions that rise against these sorts of things. There's custom that rises against them. There is rumor. There's tattletaling. There are all kinds of things that come against the person who's free. In the Soviet Union, if you were a dissenter, well, you would go under medical. You'd go under medical imprisonment, and it was because you were insane, right? You were insane, and you would categorize that legally, and you could not get out, even though the dissenters in the Soviet Union, the poets, the writers, the essayists in the samizdat press, they were the ones who truly understood the world as God made it for them, and were willing to talk about it, and yet subject to humiliation and small rooms with padding on the walls. The story out of Nashville is not a new story, but it's new to me. And so since we haven't mentioned it before, I'll bring it up to you. And it is about a group of activists that engage also Baker Donaldson law firm in Memphis. There's a group called Civil Rights Corps, and Just City is another party involved in this litigation filed in January. The main party, I think, is the National Center for Law and Economic Justice, and arguing on behalf of two men in Nashville, James Thomas and David Hickson. And they are Thomas is disabled and homeless, and was barred from getting a driver license because he'd been unable to pay court fines. And a law went into effect 5 years ago, and the lawsuit says that since then only 7% of the people who lost their licenses because of unpaid fines have been able to get them back. So people lose their license to drive because of unpaid fines. This is unconstitutional. This is done, of course, without notice, and the case is Thomas versus Haslam, filed in U.S. District Court. And these are unconstitutional revocations. And guess the number of people affected is, I would say, astronomical. It could be more, but the estimates by the attorneys filing this class action suit is that there are 146,000 low income, as they're called, poor people, too poor to pay their criminal justice debt. Now, here in Chattanooga, we know of a case like this, and that is of a very righteous and godly father of 3 children, married man, Hanson Melvin. He's struggling to pay fines too to get his license back. And so if he is stopped and arrested under the commercial enforcement process, then he's one who could join this group as a member of that class. And the problem is that here the attorneys involved are showing you something that's true, but they're not showing you the real dynamic. The real dynamic is that real reform will not be in the direction of maintaining the system of licensure, but in overturning its abuse, the abuse of the 1937 Driver's License Chauffeurs and Operators Act, I think is the name. I never can quite get the name right, but it has the word operators and chauffeurs in it. 1936, 37, the dual session of the General Assembly, in the high era of American fascism back in the 30s, when fascism was very, very popular. Even on this side of the Atlantic, right? We have our Duces and our Führers on the right side. On the left side, we have very similar operation in the great impressive rise in power of the leading executive government advocate, that being Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Thomas is 48, disabled. He relies on government benefits. That's his only money coming in. He had a criminal case in Nashville. It was resolved for more than 3 years. And to a court clerk asking about fines. I said, I'm homeless. I have no money. I'm not working. I can't pay this. Anything else for several years, he said, until he tried to get his Tennessee driver's license in October of last year. He was told he could not get one because it had been revoked because of unpaid fines. He owes $290 to the court, plus a $65 fee to get his license reinstated. Davidson County records show he owes about $470 more for a dismissed theft charge and a second trespassing conviction. He was trespassing. The first case was because he was under a bridge and he was told to leave, and had the cops charge him for that. They shouldn't just revoke your license, says this homeless man, just because you're homeless and can't pay your fine. They should try and find something to help you so you can keep your license. There are 146,000 people who've had their driver's licenses, their privileges, revoked because of an unpaid court fine since 2012. Only 10,750 were able to get their licenses back. 75% of people in Tennessee charged with crimes who qualify for appointed lawyers because they're poor. So most people in Tennessee who are in this system are indeed too poor and need to have a state-appointed 6 months in jail and up to $500 fines are the criminal consequences for driving on a revoked license. So if you have a license and and it's revoked, you are in trouble. Now, here the attorneys are they're acting as if this whole system were in fact proper, and that there is in fact no right of travel. There is not a right of travel, and we accept the premise of Tennessee commercial government, and so we are going to fight the system as it is and just favor reform so that if you're poor, you can make some kind of affirmation that you are in poverty and have the fines and the fees rescinded so you can have this means of travel. Now, the presupposition, of course, is that you cannot go to the grocery store without government permission. You cannot go to church without government permission. You cannot take your children to soccer practice. You cannot go to deliver a hot meal to the pregnant mom across town and her husband. She's not feeling well, and the husband, through church connections, has asked for food to be brought. You can't do that either. You can't run a candidate for town council around on your night for campaign duty. You can't do that. You got to have permission to do that. So we all assume that the system as it is correct, and that we don't have a right to drive. And it's true. We don't have a right to drive. But as Jerry Summers tells me in the conversation I had with him about this dilemma. But you do have, however, a right to travel. And that is something that cannot be submitted to the state. If you do submit it to the state, well, you do it through the following framework. It is a framework of commercial government and being involved in commerce. Every car that has a I've been just so you know what puts me to sleep at night. Last night I had done some office work, and here I've got my Title 55 of the Tennessee Code. It runs I don't know, 500 pages or so. And let's see. I don't have, it's 900 pages. Okay, it's about 1,000 pages. This one volume's got about 1,000 pages in it. And this is my reading. I'm promising myself I'm going to read the whole Title 55, every word in it, to understand how the system works, and then to study all the parts that matter. It is a transportation code. Every state in the union has one like it. And what has happened is that you, my listener, and your family, and all your friends, everybody understands that you cannot travel by car or truck freely. You're a Mexican immigrant. You're told, if you know enough Caucasians or black people, they'll all tell you, well, in our country, well, you can't travel about just freely. You have to have a license, and you have to follow the rules. And the main other rules are registration of your car and the accession, the agreement to have compulsory insurance. And everyone will say, well, that's the prudent thing to do, and that's really the only thing you can do. But it really is not the case legally. And the Baker Donaldson and the lawyers, the whole legal guild is on the side of the state in keeping up the facade that there is no travel. There is only transportation. There's only driving. When you are a driver, you are in commerce. You are an operator of a motor vehicle. That is a commercial term. You are involved in traffic. Traffic is a commercial term. If you are traveling, you're not driving. Okay. Now, drivers travel, but not all travelers drive. Okay, you get that? And that issue is in this story. In the one I'm reading is the Tennessean account of this in January. The headline: Lawsuit: Tennessee driver's license law punishes poor. And of course, it does punish the poor. And but if you don't have it, if you're in the commercial framework and you accept that as the truth and the only way to be able to move about by car, the revocation of your license is a death sentence. It is a civil death sentence by the state, simply because you're too poor to pay the fee. And that's why poor people are often those most dragged through the judicial industrial complex in Hamilton County. They are poor. They don't have time to buy a gun permit. They don't have time to take the gun class. All they have is a cheap Raven 25 that they picked up for $100. They're overpaying for that, an unreliable self-defense weapon, but they need it, right? They have threats against their persons and their property, and they need it. And so they have an unlicensed weapon, and they carry it. And you have many other situations like that. People cannot afford insurance. Either I eat or have car insurance. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to just probably risk it. I'm going to risk it. There's nothing I can do. And so there's there is all kind, and what happens in this code is that all the rules of the road are commercial, right? They're commercial rules of the road, and in posted speed limits, they're commercial as well. What we have in view here is the libertarian common law analysis of traveling, and it shocks people to think about this, but here's how that works. If you have a free country and a free state, and you have the right of travel, there are no regulations, right? There is no speeding. There is no speeding tort. There is no you're over 10 miles over the speeding limit, and therefore you're guilty of a crime. There is none of that. What controls are conditions and the individual fact situation. So a man is speeding guilty of a wrong or a tort if he has an accident and he's going too fast for conditions, right? Conditions control. To say that you can go 55 on a highway is it's completely arbitrary, because sometimes 55 is way too fast. Other times 55 is unreasonably slow. It depends on the circumstance. If it's a bright, warm day, not a lot of traffic, then a road that says 55 rightly could be used at 95 with no injury done, right? If there's no injury, there's no wrong. And the state is constantly, it's in the habit of prosecuting people and never able to show that it has standing, which is to say it can't show that it's been injured. And in the common law system, if there's no injury, there's no wrong, right? In the biblical system of government, if we will get there eventually, right? In 3 or 4 generations, if God blesses, right? If God tarries and God blesses, we'll have people understanding that they do want to be free and not subject to controls and taxation and thievery by the state. We'll have a system like that where the court is open. If there's a wrong, the court is there to answer the wrong. If there's no injury, there's no wrong. And so you have things left to the individual. We have public school in Tennessee, and so we can be confident that the individual character of Tennesseans is increasingly good, right? And therefore, we don't need to have regulations. With enough years of public schooling under our belts, we can be sure that people will be good. They've been improved by public schooling, I suggest, and so maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years, we'll have had enough of that. We can be independent and good, and we won't need to have any longer rules of the road that tell us in detail how to use the indicator sign, or how to park, or how to approach an intersection. Those are all rules of the road. You need to have your light bulbs working in your brake lights, right? You need to have your high beam lights down in these circumstances, and they're permitted to be up in those circumstances. We can do without the kind of puerile, childish rulemaking that fills this 1,000-page plus volume that I'm holding in my formerly ink print stained fingertips. This is David Tulis, the former newspaper man, the man with the bow tie, the man who is the slow man of Chattanooga, who asks the dumb questions, and who thinks that sometimes a question is better than any answer a bureaucrat can give here at Nooga Radio. So the lawsuit is one of great interest. I'm going to pursue reading into that, and in fact, I've looked at the Scribe D copy of the complaint this morning. It has some really very fine language, and we'll have to get to it. We'll have to get to it later. But it tells about the conflict. The lawyers are not going to try to disturb the system as it is, but there are people who do, and we've covered that exclusively at Nooganomics.com and here at Nooga Radio. And that is the Hirsch case, which of all the cases that have come up, this one on appeal by a dedicated Christian faithful man who's arguing against the racist gun law, the anti-black, anti-Negro, racist Tennessee gun statute, highly racist, highly democratic racist law, the intent to go armed statute. He's arguing that that's unconstitutionally vague, and he's saying that the Title 55 Transportation Code cannot be made to apply to any free user of the road who's not in commerce. He explains in his oral arguments, as we report, that you enter into commerce and you have to be in commerce if you are a common carrier for hire. That's to say you're carrying goods or people seeking a profit, and you're charging them. A common carrier has a job. He carries passengers, right? He carries goods. The people who do that work for him are drivers and operators. Again, all commercial terms, all legal descriptions of occupations. A driver, of course, is from the horse-drawn days. If you were a horse driver, a mule driver, the drivers are people who are carrying goods and people for hire. And so all of us today, we're not travelers anymore. We're drivers, and that's because we are submitting ourselves to regulation under Nashville. It is called commercial government, and it is not. You can say it's not really unconstitutional, but the application is unconstitutional across the state. There are brutal stories of harassment across the entire state of Tennessee, and I doubt that even if May Beavers, the governor candidate, wins, that will be changed. Her ideas are good in many areas, but they're still conventional, and I don't think she sees this issue correctly. Nonetheless, I would wish her the very best. This is David. I was going to have her on, but she just called me and said she couldn't make our interview. We'll have her another day. David Tulis, I do thank you for giving me just a few minutes of your time here. Love your neighbor, buy local, divest nationally, and invest locally. That's my argument, and I think that's a good basis for our future and thinking together in terms of Nooganomics and Noogacentrism.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader.